Might be a little too hot for this hat. Geddy Lee, My Effin Life. I actually listened to the audiobook because Geddy Lee narrates it. So of course, that's the way to go. And Alex actually pops in at times too. Like he, whenever he wants to explain something from Alex's perspective of what Alex told him, Alex comes in and will say his little thing. It's pretty cool in that regard. But yeah, you know, I kind of read a lot of these. Well, not a lot, but I usually read ones that are connected to, you know, some of my favorite bands, and it's always the same. Like the thing I'm looking for the most, right, is insight on the music. And there's, I would say, if you had to section it up, I would say there's 1/3 Rush info, which is good. It's the average for one of these kind of books. It's usually about the person's life, or growing up, or their formative years and things like that. But there is some stuff there that I didn't know. I've been a Rush fan since 81, since Moving Pictures came out. So to me, it's like I knew most of it as far as the Rush stuff. There were a couple things that surprised me, but yeah, the first thing you well, not the first thing, but the thing I took away from this the most is Geddy Lee's just a nice guy. He's just a real good guy. You know, he had an assistant in the 2000s, who in the early 2000s, who had a cancer scare. She beat it, right? But he, you know how that goes. Could come back anytime. So he, after that happened, he made a point to take her everywhere with him when he was traveling. He'd invite her to go to different things, and when they went to areas, different parts of the world, he would show her the important spots, or the you know, all the significant points of that area. And he does that kind of stuff throughout the book, you know. He doesn't make a big deal about it. He just, like, he isn't saying I did this. He'll tell you what was happening, and you can kind of pick it up yourself. They all seem just like nice guys. The only really surprise about Rush, and it wasn't that much of a surprise, was all the cocaine use. The cocaine. A similar thing happened with Alice Cooper when when Banger Films did that movie for him, Super Duper Alice Cooper. He finally admitted that he was really fucked up on cocaine, which Alice, for his whole career, and as long as I've been into him, has always said he never touched drugs. Well, he didn't say he never touched drugs. He always said, I wasn't a drug guy. I was a beer guy. Beer was my thing. He might have even said it in a different way that made it so that he wasn't lying, but he was just leaving out the information, you know. So Rush, I never figured them for that. I knew they were into smoking, you know, smoking pot and stuff, and maybe some LSD. But yeah, he confirmed that too. They were into LSD, hash, all kinds of stuff. Not the hard stuff. They were never into like heroin or meth or anything like that. But yeah, cocaine was like a big thing for them from the mid 70s, I guess, until like the mid 80s. I mean, it kind of went on for a while, but that was par for course in that business. It wasn't considered a hard drug. It wasn't looked down upon during that time. Shit, I mean, it's not that looked down upon now. But he got really into it. They all did. And yeah, I never heard him mention that or talk about that era. But so that was kind of an interesting thing. As far as music insights, things about albums, there's a couple things in there that surprised me. The fact that Power Windows, basically all the background sounds, the keyboards, the synths, all that, the stuff you hear going on, like in a song like Big Money, was done by a studio guy. He wasn't just some studio guy. He was like he was a named guy. I'll put it on the screen. I forget who he was. But yeah, I always assumed that they were real hardcore about playing all their own stuff. And I thought Geddy came up with all those sounds. And that shit was cutting edge at the time. There's a Fairlight computer is used in there. I mean, it's the 80s. It's like 85, right? So it's like... But that album, Power Windows, in specific, sounded really cool. It was like very modern at the time. I think it still holds up. A lot of fans consider it one of their best albums. I think there's too much gloss and gloop on it. It needs a little bit more organic feel to it, but they came out a lot better than some other groups of that time. They're the right guys doing it, but I was kind of surprised to hear that. All the things that you think about when you think about Power Windows, all the sounds and the keyboards and all that kind of stuff, wasn't even them. Like, when you think of Power Windows, and I'm not going to hammer on Power Windows here for too long, but the thing about it is, you don't think of the vocals on that album, you don't think of the bass, the guitars don't jump to mind. There's no, I mean, Neil's great, of course, throughout the whole thing, but, you know, no significant kind of, I don't think like, oh, that Philly does in Mystic Rhythms. The first thing I think of is the keyboards, you know, the overuse. They didn't really say much about who played what on Hold Your Fire, but I'm guessing it was kind of almost the same thing. The same producer was there for both those albums, who they actually brought back later for the more muscular counterparts, which sounded a bit more 70s-ish. That was a great album, man. When it came out, I wasn't that impressed with it. In fact, that was like the first year I didn't go see them. In my concert going years, like I didn't start being able to go to concerts till like 85. So, Scorpions, Love at First Sting Tour. That was the first show I ever saw Bon Jovi opening. I was like, who is this fruit using the American flag as a cape? Was not impressed with Bon Jovi, but the Scorpions fucking kicked ass. Seen them a bunch of times. Well, not a bunch. A couple times, I guess. But, yeah, so I didn't start going to shows till like 85. So the first time I was able to catch Rush was Hold Your Fire, which was what, 87? I think they toured through 87, 88 for that. Power Windows probably had already come and gone. So anyway, yeah, I've been seeing them every year, right up into Counterparts. For some reason, I was just like, I was 93, I was involved in a lot of other things, I was getting older, and I had opened up my first of 3 comic book businesses, so I was kind of caught up with that. But anyway, long story short, great album. But other than that, what else from Rush kind of surprised me? Well, they hated Vapor Trails. They hated the way it sounded. I think we all did. They thought they had a bunch of good songs, which they did have, and it just kind of got lost. Got lost in the sauce. It's a victim of the loudness wars, of course. You can look up what that is. It's kind of an interesting thing. That album, right? Vapor Trails. I remember having a Sony Discman, and I had it on CD. I remember when I was living in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and walk around the neighborhood just to get exercise, go down the park, and I couldn't listen to it for too long. It was starting to hurt my ears. I didn't realize it was the album. I thought it was me. I'm like, what the fuck's wrong? Like, it started to hurt. Because what it is, when you have everything pegged like that into the red, it's almost like trying to read a paragraph that's written all in caps. Your eyes just revolt after a while. Like, fuck it, who cares, you know? It's like that. But, yeah, so they had problems with that album. Really liked Snakes and Arrows. Neil felt, and to some degree the others did too, that Clockwork Angels was their crowning achievement, and it's my personal favorite Rush album. I know it's probably insane to some people, but I'm not saying it's the best. There's a difference there that people get caught up in, where there's objective best, and then there's your favorite. Like, I know as far as rock and roll goes, Led Zeppelin is objectively the best band that ever existed. But I'd rather listen to Genesis, because they're closer to my favorite, or Duran or The Damned or something, you know. So it was like that with that album. I think it's not only is it my favorite, but I do think objectively it's one of their best as far as performance-wise. lyric writing. It really all came together on that. There's not really any weak tracks there. Anyway, yeah, Geddy talks about his marriage and how he wasn't always a present father, and how that kind of haunted him a little bit, and he tried to make up for it, and just a fucking good dude. All of them are just nice, good dudes. You know, they weren't into trashing hotel rooms, unless Alex got really drunk, and they weren't into the groupie thing. I know to attain that level, usually, of popularity in the music business, you have to do the stuff. You know, there's sacrifice involved, blood sacrifice, black magic bullshit. Rush was never in the mainstream. They just had a rabid fan base who kind of supported them. You know, aside from a period in the early 80s, they weren't like a radio band. They are now. Classic rock stations play them all the time, but at the time you didn't really hear them that much on the radio. They kind of operated outside the business. You know, so I don't know. I think they just kind of fell into the popularity, and no one really came to them and said, hey, if you want to make the next level, you have to pick a relative that's going to go away. They wouldn't do it anyway. None of those guys would. They have character, and the mainstream never bothered with them. You know, they're never on TV. MTV really didn't play them that much. Sammy Hagar said when Van Halen wanted to get Ray Daniels as a manager, who was Rush's manager, he said Daniels was so far outside of the regular music business channels, he said they had no relationship with MTV at all. It's weird. It's like they're running their own parallel kind of thing aside from the music business. Not in it, but around it. Living in the world, not being of the world. That's what we try to do. He does talk a lot about the Holocaust, because I feel like, it's a big thing in every Jewish person's life, but his parents were survivors, and it feels like every other relative older than him was a survivor too. So he's heard all these stories, you know, so it weighs very heavily on him. And whenever they would do anything in Germany for musical reasons or go there for any reason, all he could think about was right down the street is a place where Hitler first started, you know, talking, or across the street is where Hitler ate lunch. You know, it's like this stuff just fucking, it's almost like the guy was traumatized by it, you know, and he wasn't there, but the stories and the heaviness of it, he blames the Holocaust for his father's death, because he said they worked him so hard in the camps that it led to his heart attack years later. I don't know about that, but I think he's given a bit too much power. I mean, he definitely is. He's given that event way too much power over him, and it doesn't seem like he's interested in relinquishing that, you know, that power. Little doggy. But yeah, he let me see. Hold on. Let me get back on the sidewalk here. But growing up in Canada, it's pretty interesting too. He talks about what it's like to be middle class back then. It's just weird. He's known Alex since they were fucking kids, and Neil, you know, as young men. The other thing too is I was surprised at the kind of level of animosity that existed during the last tour, or what would turn out to be the last tour. They were very torn about what they wanted to do. You had Geddy on one side, Neil on the other, Geddy being the guy that wanted to keep going, Neil who wanted to stop, and Alex who was like he was the lukewarm water in the middle. But yeah, Geddy just started to get really resentful, which he feels bad about today, because of course he does, because he's a good guy, right? But at the time he kind of felt like, wow, so Neil wants to quit, so because he wants to quit, my career's over too. And he's right, because it basically is. I mean, yeah, he can make a solo thing, and he did. He made the great solo album, my favorite, Headache, which we'll put a pin in and come back to you later. But yeah, it was effectively over. So there's a lot of resentment there, which he's since come around to and let go of. And on this recent book tour, he was talking about the idea of Rush going back on tour. He said for a while it didn't seem possible until he did the Taylor Hawkins benefit, the guy from Foo Fighters, where he played with a different drummer for the first time, and he said it was like it broke the spell, or it broke something, which now he feels like they can do it. He feels like they can go on tour. Now, my 2 cents on that, fine. You know, you have the branding there. People say, oh, do Lee Lyson. He's already made fun of that, saying it sounds like an insurance company. And, you know, it's him and Alex's band, too. Neil's gone. Neil's a big part of it. He's not there. What they should do is this. Not replace him as a drummer. They can use touring drummers, right? Whoever happens to be around. You know, just these legacy bands now have gotten into this thing where they don't replace members, and I think it's a much more classy way to go. You know, Depeche Mode, just 2 of them now, because the other guys died. Rolling Stones, just 3 of them now, because the other guys died. Genesis pioneered this at the end of the 70s, when every time someone would leave, Peter Gabriel and Steve Hackett, they wouldn't replace them. They would just remain who was there. One thing I would do, possibly, if they want to have 3 guys there, I would say you add Ben Mink. Because Geddy's always made these comments about, wow, it would be really great if I could just concentrate on bass and vocals. And if they're going to tour again, he's really got to concentrate on those vocals, because they were patchy during the last couple of tours. So get Ben Mink in there. He can play all the stuff, right? Keyboards, sequencers. And he's not been, you know, he's been in the Rush, you know, what's that word I'm looking for? I don't know. Gravity well? No. Orbit, thank you. It's the same thing. Neither of those things exist. They're not real. So my brain's trying to purge them. But anyway, yeah, he would be good for them, because he could do all this stuff and just leave Geddy to play bass and sing. I mean, that's what I think. And speaking of Ben Mink, at the end of the audiobook, there's 2 tracks that are outtakes from the My Favorite Headache album that he made with Ben Mink. They're not spectacular. They're cool. It's good to have. It's nice that they added them there. But not essential, but good to hear. I didn't even know there were outtakes from that session. I love that album, My Favorite Headache. And the weird thing is I knew he had a book out, and I think maybe that's what got me to listen to the My Favorite Headache album. I pulled it up recently and was listening to it. And the day after is when I saw the book in the Spotify store, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I should probably read this. So if you're a fan, it's worth reading, even if you know everything. It gives you some insights about some stuff that I didn't know about. It's a lot of family stuff, though, and a lot of Holocaust stuff. There's one chapter where he says that if you don't want to read this chapter, you don't have to. It's all about the Holocaust. So I took his offer and just skipped that chapter. It's just depressing. I didn't want to. And it's a personal thing with him. Hey, Dommy, what's up, man? But yeah, it's definitely worth reading, even if you know all the lore. Just a bunch of nice guys. A bunch of nice Canadian guys. Don't blame the teacher. Blame the school.